Who will be the opening day starters for your Miami Heat? How soon does Miami move on if they're not able to acquire either Kevin Durant or Donovan Mitchell? And what options do they have left? We're opening up the mailbag and answer that and more on today's edition of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Heat Nation. It's a Tuesday edition of Locked On Heat, your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat, however you may be watching or listening on YouTube, Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. I am David Ramil, and with me as always is my co-host, Wes Goldberg. We're opening up part 2 of the mailbag. If you did check out Monday's part 1, it was a great episode, so make sure to listen to that. But we've got another good one lined up for you today. We'll be answering some questions about what Miami should do if they're not able to acquire either KD or Donovan Mitchell. Are there other paths to acquiring a superstar? And where would the acquisition of KD rank as far as Miami's all-time big roster moves? But we'll start off with this one from longtime listener and supporter TZA Mac, who writes in, who has the best chance / odds to be a starter for the Miami Heat in the beginning of the 22-23 season? Is it Tyler Herro, Victor Oladipo, Donovan Mitchell, or Kevin Durant? Oh, good one there. Good question there.
Yeah, two of those guys are not on the Miami Heat's roster, Donovan Mitchell and Kevin Durant. So I would say if they are on Miami's roster, they'll be starting. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, either one of them. I'd say the worst odds of those, let's look at it that way. The worst odds of those, probably Mitchell. It seems like the Knicks have a much better offer on the table to acquire Donovan. He's probably going to be a Knicks star. I'd say those are almost 50-50 odds that he winds up with the Knicks. So
Mark Stein reporting on Monday that basically it reflects what you and I were saying last week too. Everything you're hearing as far as the Knicks and Donovan Mitchell, it all just means that the Jazz are trying to get as much leverage as possible over the Knicks to get as much of those first round picks that the Knicks have and as much of their young players that the Knicks have as possible in some sort of deal. It just feels like it's a matter of when Donovan Mitchell gets traded to the Knicks and for what, and not if. And so, yeah, I'm with you. Probably least likely starting for the Heat on opening night is Donovan Mitchell. I'm going to go ahead and just answer. I'm going to say Tyler Herro of that group probably has the best chance at being a starter for Miami on opening night, just because, again, I'm not going to bet on Kevin Durant because he's not on the roster. And so now I'm between Tyler Herro and Victor Oladipo. I just don't see how Oladipo fits into the starting lineup with all the spacing issues and the fact that he kind of makes more sense as this utility swingman piece as a sixth man. And with Tyler, if the Heat can't make that big swing for a superstar, and by the way, let's remember the reason why the Heat are desperate for a superstar. It's because they believe they need a secondary scoring threat next to Jimmy Butler, another guy who can create offense specifically in the half court. If Tyler Herro can make enough of a leap, and the Heat don't have that superstar on the roster opposite of Jimmy Butler, then it kind of makes sense to, just say, you know what, let's see what Tyler can do as a starter. And absent of getting Kevin Durant, is Tyler Herro our best option offensively, at least for now? And let's just hope that he gets better enough defensively, that Lowry in better shape can cover up for some of those issues defensively in that backcourt, with obviously being bracketed by guys like Jimmy and Bam. They're going to be playing small with presumably Caleb Martin or even Haywood Highsmith at the 4. But you just lean all the way into offense. And so I'll go Tyler Herro.
I think it makes sense. I really do. I think Miami not as invested as Victor Oladipo is in getting him the kind of production and minutes and playing time where he can wind up taking this year and parlaying that into an even bigger, more lucrative contract next season. I know that he's trying to have another 1-year prove-it deal with Miami, but that's not on Miami to say, oh, we want to do whatever we can to put him in a position to succeed so he can go and get more money elsewhere. That's not the goal for the Miami Heat. They want to win now, and I think Tyler and what he can do is the much more immediate, much more productive player of those two. And so I think, yes, Herro makes a lot more sense. I'm not necessarily sold on whether or not Herro can supplant Max Strus and or Duncan Robinson or whoever that option has been over the last couple of seasons. I think it's right now, I would say it's probably 60-40 in Tyler's favor. He has to show some improvement defensively. I think offensively he can learn to coexist alongside Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry. So having said that, he's smart enough, he's young enough, he's your future. Lean into it. Why not put him in your starter? And I think that's a selling point for Victor too, is you could say, look, we're not going to start you because we want to go with a player more likely to help us win. But this is your chance to prove that you can be a 6th man of the year candidate. Like right now, if you want to put betting odds on anybody, I'd say it's Victor Oladipo for 6th man of the year. Like he's got all the chops. If he can continue to improve the way we saw him have his moments throughout the course of those few games that he played for Miami, I don't see why he wouldn't be the bet on favorite right now to win 6th man of the year, because he's probably going to come off the bench. He's going to provide high level defense. It's going to be a very strange candidacy because, again, we haven't seen a defensive minded player win 6th man of the year ever, perhaps. I think in the history of the award,
I think Iguodala win it. If Andre Iguodala won it, it would be the closest thing.
I guess
even if he didn't win it, it would that would be the model that Victor Oladipo was trying to recapture. Because if Iguodala didn't win it, he should have several times. But that would be the model, right? And that's a really good point. You know, if you're gonna, I don't know that you can bring Tyler and Vic off the bench. I just don't know that it works. Now, you know, you don't kind of form all of your rotation patterns around what your bench is. You kind of want to start with your starters and then go from there. And you want to kind of put your best 5 out there to begin games for the most part. But yeah, I don't really see a world in which Tyler and Vic could both come off the bench. So you kind of want to start one of them, right? Strus is much more like kind of more of a complimentary guy. He could just sort of mold and play alongside anybody. So if you're going to say, all right, well, we got to put one of Tyler or Vic in the starting lineup, Tyler does make more sense because, like you said, lean into it. He's your future. He's the best chance to kind of hit a higher ceiling. And so, yeah, I think Tyler Herro, of the two, I think there are 2 spots that are open to competition in training camp. I think it's shooting guard and I think it's power forward. And at shooting guard, it'll be Tyler Herro, Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, and Victor Oladipo. Like they'll all be given a chance to win the 2-guard spot. And at the 4, it'll be Caleb Martin, Haywood Highsmith, and Nikola Jovic. Like all 3 of those guys are going to have a chance to go ahead and win the starting 4 spot. But we're talking about.
Let's answer the question.
Yeah.
Let's answer this question because we got one here from William who writes in, what's your Heat starting 5 for game 1 of the season? Mid-October at some point, Heat roll out their opening day lineup at FTX Arena. Who is out there for the Miami Heat?
It's going to be Kyle Lowry. It's as long as there's like no weird preseason injuries, okay? Well, Kyle Lowry, Tyler Herro, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and Haywood Highsmith.
All right.
That's who I think is just. I think Haywood Highsmith ends up starting at the 4 spot.
Yeah, I absolutely see that. I'm going to flip it around a little bit. I'm going to say it's the same starting 5 with the exception of at the 5, it'll be either LaMarcus Aldridge or Blake Griffin. I just think that's what Miami's going to trot out there. I think they're going to find some way to acquire one of these older vets like they always do because they're just, I don't know, like they're just believers in what old veterans have to offer.
So you think it'll be like Blake or LaMarcus next to Bam in the front court?
Yeah.
Are you kidding right now, or do you really think that?
No, I think so. I really do think so. I think that's just the way they lean, like as a front office. Like I don't know that they necessarily want to invest in a younger player at this point, and I think they feel more secure in like an older or Paul Millsap. Like, is he a better option than Highsmith? Probably not. I also think that they feel.
Well, LaMarcus' name is interesting because they've been kind of they obviously wanted LaMarcus Aldridge years ago in free agency. They pitched him, you know, even though they didn't have cap space, they tried to get him anyway, and all this stuff. So, look, I wouldn't rule out LaMarcus Aldridge. I don't know what happens with the Heat's roster. They can't sign LaMarcus Aldridge without going into the luxury tax. Do they waive somebody? Do they clear a roster spot? Do they do something else? It's possible, right? There's still plenty of time between now and the start of the regular season. Who knows? Does Udonis Haslem say, you know what? Actually, I don't want to come back. And then they're like, oh, wow, okay, let's just go get another old big man. So, yeah, I mean, Haslem hasn't re-signed yet. I don't know what he's waiting on, you know? So, yeah, anything's possible. That's interesting. I thought I was coming in with the hot take with Highsmith as the 4 after the summer league he had. They're really high on him, but you came in with an even hotter starting 5 take. So kudos to you. Good job.
Well, I don't know. I'm kind of half joking here. At the same time, it's just Jovic isn't ready. I don't know that Highsmith is somebody that they necessarily want to turn the keys to the car over to. And I know he's going to be more of a complimentary player. And if you're going to do that and just have somebody kind of be a kind of spot holder there, a play at the 4, while you kind of go through these interchangeable lineups, why not a more trusted veteran? That's kind of just the way they've operated for the past few years. Even on teams that are like title contenders, it's always just like, oh, we'll put player X there. Like they did this with a couple seasons ago with Myers Leonard at the starter. It's like, oh, he's only playing 10, 15 minutes a game, but he's our guy for those 10, 15 minutes. So I don't see why they wouldn't do something similar to that this offseason as well. But we'll see how it plays out. We got a couple months, and there's still the possibility of some big-time acquisitions there. But what if those fall through? We'll talk about how Miami bounces back in the next segment. But before we do that, just a reminder that Built Bar is a proud sponsor of this show. And right now, you should be ordering from Built Bar right after you're done with this podcast. Go to Built.com and try their new coconut brownie chunk puffs. They're for the people who invented healthy and tasty comes the latest gift to your taste buds. You probably tried the brownie, coconut brownie chunk Built Bar, but now they've made the switch and brought them over in the new puffs treatment as well. So it's covered in marshmallows. They're delicious, covered in chocolate. Still the great taste that you know and love, but even better. You've tried them, Wes. You swear by them. You said they're absolutely fantastic.
I love them. I love all the puff flavors in general. I'm probably gonna have one after we're done with this podcast.
Nice. Well, if you need a little snack in between your day, you don't want to indulge in something that's too high in calories or too high in sugars or anything like that, then Built Bar are the way to go because you'll get exactly what you're looking for, all the nutrients you could possibly get, and still in a perfectly tasty package as well. So go to Built.com right now. Use the promo code LOCK15 and you get 15% off your order. Use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off, but only if you go to Built.com. Which NFL stars move the betting line the most? Starting July 18th, Locked On NFL gives you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers at BetOnline. Available July 18th on Locked On NFL, where you get your podcast and on YouTube. We're opening up the mailbag for part 2. Again, if you didn't check out part 1, go do so. You can find it wherever you get podcasts or on YouTube. But we'll start off this segment with this question by Proud by Pack, who writes in, how long does Miami wait until they move on to quote other opportunities? Would it putting pressure on the Nets or Jazz by pulling out make the process go on quicker now that the Suns are out of the picture? It should be very limited options now, right? So a lot of little things thrown into that one question by Prod by Pack there. But I don't know that they're going to move on to other opportunities. I think that's the best way to look at it because we've talked about this before on the show. You brought this up many times. There's no need for them to pull the trigger right away. There's no need for the Jazz or Nets to pull the trigger right away. Both of those teams are going into, in Brooklyn's case, a softer rebuild, but they're going to be moving on from their superstars. They've already traded away Gobert. It seems likely that they'll move on from Mitchell if they don't trade him to the Knicks. So if they wind up saying, you know what, we don't like either New York's or Miami's or anybody's offer, why wouldn't they just keep those players for a few months? They're under no rush to move either of those players. So you've talked about the possibility before. We might not see a move until near the trade deadline. And that seems like a possibility for Miami. I don't know if Miami necessarily wants to be in that position, but they've made moves in the offseason, in the midseason before, and they've still gone on to win. They did it when they went to the bubble. They acquired Andre Iguodala and Jay Crowder. So even a team that seems like everything's flowing well or has all the pieces in place, if they can get their big name in February as opposed to in July or August, why not do so?
A couple things here. First of all, this isn't how leverage works. You don't pull out of one deal to create leverage in another deal. You use one deal to create leverage on the other deal. So as far as the question, should they just move out of the Nets or the Jazz kind of negotiations? That's just not how leverage works at all.
Yeah, you can't just take your ball and go home and then have them say, no, we really want to give you this player.
Right.
We will take Omer Yurtseven and a second-round pick in exchange for Kevin Durant.
Right. Like if the Heat have a deal lined up with Utah for, let's just call it Tyler Herro and picks. All right, let's just call that the deal for Donovan Mitchell.
Right.
And the Heat are able to go to Brooklyn and say, hey, we're going to pull this deal. We're going to pull the trigger on this deal. It's going to be Herro and 3 first-round picks for Donovan Mitchell. Again, whatever. Let's just call it that. In Brooklyn, but as the Heat, you say, unless you want to give us Kevin Durant for this, Then Brooklyn might say, well, obviously Phoenix might not be playing ball with us. Nobody else is playing ball with us. So it's either this or nothing. That's how you create leverage. I don't know. That doesn't mean it'll work, but
Right.
the other way doesn't work. The other way isn't hanging the phone up on Utah and only dealing with one team in one front office. It's just not how leverage works. So
No.
that part,
not in Miami's favor. Like we saw this play
not
out
in Miami's favor. Yeah.
Yeah, similarly to how the acquisition of Jimmy Butler, that first season where they were going to trade X players for them, and then Tibbs and the front office in Minnesota said, well, we want this. And Pat Riley reportedly grew so frustrated at their trade demands that he hung up and said, screw this, and he stopped engaging them. And then sure enough, Jimmy was traded to Philadelphia for that one season. Right. So that's the best case, I think, scenario for Miami is if New York or Phoenix or either one of those teams just gets frustrated with Utah and Brooklyn and says, you know what, we're done. We can't. We're tired of keeping our fans strung along here. We're just done. We want Mitchell. He'll find his way here eventually, but we're not going to engage in the Jazz front office. Right. And we've known Danny Ainge to be that frustrating in the past. Like people just get tired of working with him because he tries swindling them or he tries eking out that last bit of blood from the stone. And maybe that's what happens with New York's front office as they grow increasingly frustrated, and then Utah bounces back and says, look, we either move forward with Mitchell, which is certainly an option, although an unlikely one, or we find another suitable trade partner, and Miami might be the only one left.
There's two executives in the NBA that you do not want to get into a staring contest with, and it's Danny Ainge and it's Pat Riley. Those are the two most patient executives in the NBA. Danny Ainge, kind of panned because of how patient he is, not pulling the trigger on an Anthony Davis deal because he thought he had to be given up too much, right? And Celtics fans just being like, what are we waiting on here? And obviously it worked out because the Celtics roster that he constructed was no longer in charge of, but the one that he constructed just went to the finals. So it ended up working out. But these are two really great executives, and they're really great because of how patient that they are, because there are a lot of executives that are not willing to be patient at all. I mean, we just saw...
their jobs are on their line.
To be patient with James Harden, and all they got back was Ben Simmons and some picks for James Harden, and that did not work out for them because they did feel the pressure. Right now, the reason it's taking so long is because there are not. I don't believe that there are any new negotiations happening right now, at least according to the reporting that we've heard from ESPN and other places. Something on the market has to give, right? And I talked about this on the Monday show, but on my little monologue that I posted, but Brooklyn has no incentive to move on from Durant because he's under contract. They're not in any sort of rush right now. Miami's not in any sort of rush because they basically offered whatever it is that they have. Maybe they're looking to create some other draft picks with some third team or something like that. But basically, Brooklyn knows what all of their offers are from Miami, Phoenix, or otherwise. Something on the market has to change. Now, I don't know if that's Kevin Durant causing more of a stink. Maybe that's something that could happen. But again, cause a stink, man. You don't have to be in training camp until October. Stink up whatever you want. It's July. We got a couple months before we really have to deal with you. And so that's why I kind of think that this could go into the regular season.
Yeah, and we saw that play out exactly with Jimmy, too, that year he was in Minnesota. It's like he didn't get traded until the start of the season already. So, he's going to get – look, we saw that with James Harden, too, when he was traded to Brooklyn. Players will go into camp and be like, yeah, I'm getting paid to be here. I'm under contract. I don't want to get fined, et cetera. Let me see how this plays out. Oh, this plays out pretty crappy. I don't want to be here for this. I want out. And that's when they'll likely put their foot down and say, you know what? I can't deal with this.
So the other part of this too, one other part of this is that how long will the Heat wait? As long as it takes, because this is the Heat team built to wait right now, right? They have a certain amount of assets that they are able to move. Those assets only multiply in December and then in January when some of these guys that they just re-signed, Dwayne Dedmon, Victor Oladipo, et cetera, become tradable. Caleb Martin, those contracts become tradable. So if anything, their options only multiply the longer the season goes on. And, you lose PJ Tucker. That sucks. This is still a really good basketball team. This is not a team that needs to make a move necessarily right now. They want to. They super want a star to add to Jimmy Butler, but there is no immediate need to do that. So they'll just wait.
Yeah. It's, the last part of Prod by Pac's question here, it should be very limited options now, right? It's you're absolutely right. There aren't a lot of options. I think that they're comfortable moving forward with the roster as is. Would they have liked an upgrade? Yes. But if one didn't present itself or it doesn't present itself before training camp, they'll move forward as is. Again, like you said,
superstar bust, right? I don't think there's a John Collins or a Harrison Barnes thing waiting either. I just don't see that as a thing. This team
Sacramento
is powder dry on a superstar and nothing else. And if it requires you to move one future first-round pick for John Collins, They're not going to do it, I don't think, because that's one less first-round pick you have in case the next superstar comes available.
Right. This last question, not this last question, this segment from Shogun writes in, what happens if we don't get KD or Mitchell? Do you think we can get a superstar before the trade deadline, possibly Russ or Kyrie? No. I just don't think either one of those names, again, moves the needle for Miami. Like Kyrie, from everything you've said and reported, not an interesting name for that front office. And I just don't see Russ, as big a name as that is. Like, you do not want to be paying that player $40+ million.
Yeah.
He's not an upgrade over anything you have in this roster right now. You hate to knock on historically good player, and at the same time, like, he's just a name. Either he's going to accept a buyout, which why would he accept a buyout, or he's just going to wind up like, we saw it with John Wall, right? He accepted that buyout in order for him to join the Clippers. But I don't see Russ doing that. A little bit more pride there from him.
It took John Wall of not playing, right? To just sort of, you know what? And from what we understand from the reporting on that buyout, he only had to give up like $6 million of his 40. He still made like $35-40 million in that buyout, and then he got the money back from the Clippers. So he basically lost zero money. That's a good deal for him. But again, it took a year of not playing, a year plus of not playing. Maybe that's what Westbrook has to do down the line. I don't think that his ultimate home is in Miami. Who knows what happens with Russell Westbrook? He's not going to be playing for the Heat. The Kyrie Irving thing, I understand why fans want to talk about it. Look, I like the if it doesn't cost you a whole lot. You and I have kind of circled that wagon a few times before. I just don't see it happening with the Heat. I don't know that they want to welcome that personality into that locker room right now. As far as another option, I'll throw another one at you. I've said this before. The Bradley Beal no trade clause should be renamed the only if Miami clause. If by the trade deadline the Wizards are stinking it up and they're 15 games under 500 and Bradley Beal says, you know what, I've seen enough, get me out of here. I got my super max extension. I'm getting paid $50+ million 4 years from now. I am good to go. I got my money. Now put me somewhere where I want to play. Would the Heat maybe pull the trigger? They're going to have so many contracts at that point that they can trade. Like I said before, the Oladipo, Caleb Martin, Dwayne Dedmon, all those contracts become movable at that point before the deadline. Yeah. If Donovan Mitchell has since moved, if Kevin Durant has since moved, and those options are truly off the table, I could see the Heat at least kicking the tires on the Bradley Beal thing. That would just be the only other name I would throw out, but not right now. We're talking about like at the deadline.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, we'll talk a little bit if somehow Miami was to acquire KD or Donovan Mitchell. Where would that rank amongst the greatest acquisitions for the Heat all time? We'll talk about that in the next segment. You're listening to Locked On Heat. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Just a reminder that you can always reach us via email at lockedonheat@gmail.com or via Twitter using the hashtag AskLHeat. Be sure to please subscribe to the show and leave a review. I love these kinds of questions. So many of you sending in excellent questions, but these are the ones that really I appreciate because they go back into the depths of Heat history to answer something like this. Where would Kevin Durant and Donovan Mitchell rank among the biggest Heat acquisitions of all time? That is a fantastic question. That's a tough one. I guess Donovan Mitchell, that's a little bit harder because I think an all-star level player, certainly a good player, but I don't know that it's a better acquisition than, say, Jimmy Butler.
Right.
Like, getting Jimmy is a bigger deal than getting Donovan Mitchell.
Can we start just with the current like top acquisitions of all time, and then we can kind of insert Donovan Mitchell and Kevin Durant where we think that they might end up, right? So the number one acquisition of all time is LeBron. I think that's right. Number two is Shaq. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if he ranks better than Jimmy at this point because Jimmy,
interesting,
all-star. Yeah, well, Jimmy multiple all-star, more impactful.
More impactful. I know Shaq won a championship. Jimmy didn't.
Did Shaq win a championship, or did Dwayne Wade and Alonzo Mourning
won a championship?
You're doing the same thing I accused fans of doing in the previous episode. The rose-colored glasses of a goddamn title. It's like, oh, we won a championship. Everybody was so great.
Does Dwayne Wade beat the Mavericks in 2006 without Shaq on that team? No.
Yeah, I think so. Like,
they never get that far. they never get that far without Shaq.
Okay, look, he was an MVP the season before. That was the season before. I don't know that he was like Shaq, a fantastic player when he was acquired. He was already on the downturn in his career. I don't know. Like, was he a better, more impactful player for the few seasons that he was in Miami? Again, 2 of which were impactful. The last one, not so much. I don't know. I don't know. It's a tough question, but okay, I'll give it to you. Shaq, third best.
The championship, I think, is a fair enough. If we're splitting hairs, that's a fair enough hair splitter. But yeah, Shaq, Jimmy Butler, and then what? Chris Bosh.
Yeah.
And we're not including like re-signing Dwayne Wade. You already had Dwayne Wade, so I'm not like including that. Unless we want to include getting back Dwayne Wade from Cleveland for a second-round pick.
No. So where does Zoe fit? Like, he took some time to mature, and it was a different era where the center position was you were much more dependent on its success.
Probably right behind Bosh, right?
Yeah, I think so. So that's your top 5 right there. That's your top 5. LeBron,
Yeah,
Shaq, Jimmy, Chris, and Shaq and Jimmy interchangeable. Chris and Zoe.
Dion Waiters.
It's up there. It's up there, but he was a free agent acquisition. I don't know. That's
Counts.
a tough one.
I mean,
yeah.
So was LeBron, right? I mean, I know that was like a sign and trade, but
no.
Yeah, Dion Waiters. We'll just pencil in Dion Waiters as 6, but just for the. But all right. So if it's Donovan Mitchell, I think that's more in the Alonzo Mourning tier than it is like the Shaq, Jimmy Butler tier, right? Like, LeBron is historic. Nobody's touching LeBron.
Yeah. But biggest free agent acquisition in NBA history, like ever. not just Heat history. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Donovan Mitchell is more in the Bosh and Zoe kind of category, right? Donovan Mitchell, like Seth Barno just came out with his tier rankings. He's considered like and it's a really over at The Athletic. If you haven't checked it out, it's like a really cool little exercise he does. And basically, he ranks Donovan Mitchell a tier 3 superstar. So you've got of the the tier 1 superstars or that's Giannis, MVP, Steph Curry, Jokic, Embiid, these guys. Tier 2 is like Jimmy Butler, Jason Tatum, like these other guys. And he ranked Donovan Mitchell a tier 3. And I think that's right where you would put kind of Bosh, who was the 3rd best player on those Heat winning teams, and Alonzo, who was an awesome player.
But yeah, probably not like dominant enough in that particular era to be like, the centerpiece of your team. Like, you needed
he was
Hardaway to be All-Star.
Yeah, he wasn't. He was as a centerpiece. He wasn't good enough for the Heat to win a championship. So
right.
So Donovan Mitchell's there. Where would Durant
Donovan? I'm sorry. Well, yeah, that's the thing. I would put Donovan above Zoe, which it feels insulting. And before Chris. Just because Chris, we're kind of overlooking how great he was in Toronto, and now Raptors fans are going the other way and saying, "Oh, we're overvaluing what he did in Toronto just because they didn't win a lot." I don't know. I think
Bosh was also joining LeBron and D Wade, and so the impact of that was so major, right? Where he deserves to be in that upper tier above Zoe. Where I think that it would be similar with Donovan Mitchell, right? Where you would be bringing him in not to be your best player. Right? That's still Jimmy Butler. I think he probably isn't your 2nd best player if you're able to hold on to Bam in a Donovan Mitchell trade. Of those 3, I think Donovan Mitchell is the 3rd best player of that 3, and that's similar to Chris Bosh. So I can already see the comments lighting up. Like, with Donovan Mitchell, bet worse. That's how we think. That's how we feel. Anyway,
KD would be your 3rd best, I think, acquisition behind LeBron and behind Jimmy, because I still think Jimmy's above Shaq. So you've got LeBron, Jimmy, KD, and then Shaq as your 4th best acquisition.
I think KD and Shaq that's the right place. That it's very similar, right? Because you had Shaq at 32 years old. Yep. Durant will be 34 by the time next season starts. Guys at past their prime, maybe at the tail end of their prime, depending on however you want to define it. But these are the numbers for Shaq in his final year with the Lakers before coming over to Miami. 21.5 points per game, 11.5 rebounds per game, 2.9 assists, half a steal, 2.5 blocks, true shooting percentage of 65.9%. He was 6th in MVP voting his final year with the Lakers. He ended up finishing 2nd in MVP voting his first season in Miami. Compared to Kevin Durant, 29.9 points per game, so 30 points a game, 7.4 rebounds, 6.4 assists, 0.9 steals, 0.9 blocks, a true shooting percentage of 63.4%. Before he got hurt, he was the leader for MVP before he got injured in the regular season, right? Most people had him as the leader for MVP. He didn't finish high up in the MVP voting only because he didn't have enough games played,
Ooh,
but
it's
he
tough.
very, very, very like eerily similar. And with Durant, the idea would be pairing him with the in-home
Yeah.
star, Jimmy Butler in this case, just like it was with Shaq, pairing him with the in-home star and Dwayne Wade. Now, Dwayne Wade was much younger than Jimmy Butler is now. You can even argue if the Heat are able to get KD without parting with Bam, maybe Bam
Right.
is more of the Dwayne Wade in that situation, where you kind
Ooh.
of, you have that young stud who's able to get over the top early in his career because he's surrounded by great veterans.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it would be really close. Right now, I don't know. If Durant wins a championship in
Like I'm getting,
Miami, like
yeah,
at the end, if when the wash is kind of done here,
yeah.
it would be really. You might have to argue that Durant would be the greater one, but I don't think
I'm,
that you
I'm
could
getting
argue that
hung
until we
up.
know that.
I'm getting hung up on like KD's age and injury history, but it's not like it's not like he's a washed. And I hate that terminology. It's not like he's a bum out there or he's not productive. It's like it's Kevin Durant, arguably a top 5 player in NBA history. Like it doesn't. It
Both of
doesn't.
these guys, by any measure, top 12 players all time. Look at any list, like top 12 players all time. Kevin Durant and Shaq. I mean, these are historically great players. With what? When the Heat traded for Shaq, what did we really think? 2 years, like real championship, 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah, I
As a
don't even.
window.
Yeah, I don't even think it mattered. I remember just the buzz, the electricity. Like I was
Yeah.
upset as a fan at that point. It's like, oh, I love Lamar Odom. Oh, Karan Butler, great young player. Brian
Yeah.
Grant, grizzled veteran who like clawed up Yao Ming's back because he was an undersized quote unquote center. Like I'll never forget these kinds of things. And yet at the same time, it's like, who cares? It's Shaquille O'Neal. He's got his own,
Yeah.
rap album. He's got his own shoe line. He's the biggest star in the NBA. And Kevin Durant,
In sports.
different because like not as charming at all as
No.
Shaq. Much more, to himself. And
Different.
again, as I've said before, different. Very good point. Different. But still, he's out there. He is a killer. Like he is a great player, and there's no overlooking that. Like Miami is the best team in the East if they get Kevin Durant somehow. I really do think that's the case. So, yeah, it's
And similar to also
even
again to like
arguing.
kind of draw the parallels. You mentioned like giving up beloved young players like Karan Butler at the time. It would be
Tyler,
similar.
yeah,
It would be similar if you have to part with Tyler Herro, isn't it? Like it sort of feels
and
like, yeah,
Bam,
you know what?
and
If
Bam.
you really give yourself truth serum on Karan Butler, even back then, you're like, yeah, he's a good young player. Is he ever going to be as good as Shaq? No, he's not.
No.
Same thing with Tyler Herro. Like, love Tyler Herro. Fans love Tyler Herro. But if you
Yes.
give yourself truth serum, will he ever be the player that Kevin Durant is? No.
Yeah.
I mean, he can't be. Kevin Durant's 7 feet tall and shoots like Steph Curry. It's crazy. Like it, and so you gotta like, do you want like 2 more years of this guy in his prime, or sort of the long tail that maybe Tyler Herro provides you? It's a real question worth asking, I think. And same, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Herro, put, insert young player here. But that is the central question kind of facing the Heat. But if the Heat were to get Kevin Durant, it would just feel so much like when they landed Shaq. Not necessarily, like, you make a good point. Not necessarily from the buzz, just because Shaq was the biggest athlete in the world at the time, probably.
Yeah.
Where Durant is a huge superstar, but it doesn't come with like the Hollywood glitz and glamour, and doesn't put the Heat as an organization on the map the way that Shaq did. The Heat as an organization are on the map currently, but Durant would move the needle still a whole lot. Like,
Yeah.
you get Kevin Durant in Miami, ESPN's not ignoring the Heat anymore.
Oh no. Yeah, they're going to make some national television appearances. That's for sure.
Yeah.
They're going to be on TNT. Yeah, I mean, like the only thing like I keeps coming back to with Jimmy is how he kind of like resuscitated brand new life into a franchise that was kind of dying after Dwayne's retirement. So that's a little different. That's the biggest. You're right, but I'm overlooking Shaq's impact at putting Miami on the map. So it's a tough one. It's the same tier. LeBron, untouchable. Then you've got a second tier there. If we're doing tiers again, you've got Jimmy, Shaq, and KD, because they would renew Miami to a certain degree. They would just bring something still in their primes, even though they're in the tail end.
I'm thinking about this now too, and I know we're going long on this, but I think you almost have to put him over. I don't know. It depends on how you look at this. When the Heat got Jimmy Butler, it wasn't viewed as that big of a deal.
No.
Now we're looking at it now as obviously it was a huge deal. Like you said, kind of brought life back into the organization, took you out of the Hassan Whiteside, Tyler Johnson, James Johnson, Deion Waiters years, and put you back into the thick of being one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. It was a huge
Yep.
deal. But I was looking at trade grades earlier this summer, and they were giving the Heat like a C- because Jimmy Butler cost so much and because he was so much drama. And they give the Sixers an A because Josh
Oh,
Richardson
yeah.
is such a good two-way player on a
Oh,
great
yeah.
contract. And it was just like, no, like the way that the Jimmy Butler trade was viewed when it happened was not even close to this tier, right? It wasn't even in the Alonzo Mourning tier. It wasn't, right? And so if you kind of think about it the way it's viewed in the moment, I think KD and Shaq would kind of be in a tier by themselves, right? Where it would be like this landmark thing, one of the biggest superstars in the league moving teams, versus when Jimmy moved to Miami, it wasn't looked at as that. It was huge now, like, but the ripple effects I think were bigger now with Jimmy Butler, where it just sort of felt like the initial impact was bigger with Shaq and would be bigger with KD.
Yeah, I guess I don't know, but these moves, like the moves themselves, aren't in a vacuum. It's like you're kind of looking at also from in the rearview mirror. Like, I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
Jimmy's acquisition was huge. Chris's was huge. I don't know. It's tough to quantify there. I would say Jimmy's still in that second tier, away from Shaq. I'm sorry, away from Donovan, Chris, and Zoe. That's the second tier. The great players that you'd love on this franchise, but not necessarily the building blocks, which is what the other four players, LeBron, KD, Jimmy, and even Shaquille O'Neal at that point in his career, definitely were. So I think that's the way to look at it. It's an interesting question. We appreciate that one coming in, and I hope you enjoyed these past couple of episodes from the mailbag. We'll probably be doing some more over the course of the offseason, so make sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get podcasts, or on YouTube, or on both, so that you can continue making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you get your second listen to stay up to date on the latest news and rumors in the NBA in just 30 minutes with Locked On NBA. Locked On NBA, your daily NBA update in just 30 minutes. This is David Ramil signing off for now. Thanks so much for joining me, Wes.
Wrap it up, B.